With us today is a man who has been behind many of Israel's most daring and complicated security missions, General Amos Yadlin. Amos, thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with the AIPAC family again after a tough year.
Amos, I'd like to go back 40 years ago. 40 years ago, you and 7 other F-16 pilots attacked the Osirak nuclear reactor in Iraq. And by doing so, you stopped the Iraqi nuclear program. And the entire world is grateful to you for what you did that day. Can you walk us through a little bit of what it was like to be part of that brave band of pilots and the operational challenges you faced trying to take out the reactor?
Yeah, we just came back from Hill Air Force Base in Utah. The group of the 12 first Israeli pilots that were selected to be in the first squadron of F-16. At that time, the best airplane in the world. Still a very, very serious airplane. And when we came back to Israel, we were called by General David Ivry, who was the head of the commander of the Israeli Air Force, and he told us the following: I know that every fighter pilot dream is to shoot down a MiG, but I have another job for you. You will do what we call air to mud. You will attack a very long range target, which is strategic. He haven't told us what is the type of the target, but he wants us to start and to train. There was a lot of operational strategic challenges. First, the range. At that time, we didn't have air refueling. And he said that we must go as far as we can. And he asked what the F-16 can do, how far it can go. So this is a question that my grandmother is asking. You have to tell us what configuration, are we going low, are we going high, who is the enemy. So he gave us some parameters, and the result of the calculation basically done by Ilan Ramon, the Israeli first astronaut.
Right.
He was number 8 on the mission. And Ilan worked for me at that time. I was the deputy squadron commander. And he said, Amos, it is going to 950 kilometers. We went to General Ivry. They say, not enough. You have to do something with the configuration. Okay, we took, instead of 6 missiles, only 2 missiles. We plan to eject the external fuel tanks after they will transfer the fuel, so the drag is the bird is more clean. We came back to General Ivry saying 980. He said, you need another 20. Okay, we calculate something else, and then we knew that the target is 1,000 kilometers. So we went to a map. We look north, it's Turkey. We look west, it's Libya. At that time, nothing was in Libya. Down, it was Yemen. We look to the east, we understand what was the target.
Where you're going, yeah.
And a year of training. At that time, Iraq was in a war with Iran. So we knew that they are on high alert. There are interceptors, MiG, on alert, and there are a lot of SAM, which is a surface-to-air missiles. One must understand we were still veterans of Yom Kippur with Yom Kippur trauma, that Soviet anti-aircraft missiles are very efficient. In 1982, a year later, we destroyed the SAM sites in the Baca Valley. But it is still to be in the future. And the fact that Iran was in a war with Iraq have made them even more dangerous, because the Iranians attacked the same nuclear reactor. It's interesting. They attack it 6 months before us. They haven't achieved anything in the attack, but the awareness of the Iraqis to the fact that this is a target that somebody may attack caused them to bring more air defense to the area. So it was well defended. So very small spare of fuel, very defended area, not good enough intelligence.
Right.
No satellites, Israeli satellites at that time. So there was a Mossad agent that went to Baghdad, and we got a drawing of the place, which of course looked different from a ground perspective to the air perspective. On Independence Day, 1981, we were about to take off to the attack.
After a year of training.
After a year of training, we went down to a base in South Israel, which called Etzion. Today, after the peace with Egypt, it belonged to Egypt, because this was the shortest route to the target. It's the first time that they show us the real intelligence, and they told us about the importance of the attack. We're briefed by the Air Force commander, which is not usually the case. Usually you are briefed by your squadron commander. The chief of staff came, and he came in the middle of a shiva, sitting on his son, was also a pilot and was killed in an accident.
Wow.
So we understood that this is very, very, very important. Even though at that time we would trade the mission to kill 1 MiG. Today, not even 5 MiG,
Yeah.
because it's really became one of the most important missions that the Israeli Air Force have done. Back to the Independence Day. We went to the airplane, we start the engine, some of us even start the taxi, and then we were called back. Mission cancelled. The story behind it, that it was leaked. It was leaked to the Israeli opposition, and from Yom HaAtzmaut to Shavuot, we were called again, and this time we took off. We flew over Jordan. The King Hussein, was on his yacht near Aqaba, and he saw us flying. The first route was to the south. Then we flew over Saudi Arabia.
How low are you flying?
The lower you can think about, because we want not to be detected by the early warning radars, and especially on the last one that we were exposed to the missile defense. You can't over the Afarait River and the Tigris River to fly too low, because there is a lot of high power cables there. The legend is saying that some of us flew under the cables, but this should be tested in the future. It is not a target that's difficult to identify, because it's a big nuclear reactor. The Iraqis put some balloons with metal anchoring to the ground to make sure that airplanes are not flying around. This was a surprise, so we went a little bit higher, but the attack was successful, and we were able to avoid the missiles and basically heading home.
And you dropped your bombs, you dropped your extra tanks.
Yeah, we dropped the extra tanks on the way.
On the way.
Halfway to Iraq. The bombs were dropped over the target. By the way, the Israeli Air Force attaché was called to the Pentagon and say, why you haven't told us that you have an air refueling capability, and why you haven't told us that you adapt some smart bombs to the F-16? And of course, the two questions were not right. We didn't have air refueling, and we never adapt, the dumb bomb of the F-16. It was a dumb bomb, but smart pilot. On the way back, we were happy to see that everybody was out. For about a minute, Ilan Ramon was not on the communication, And we were very, very concerned because he was the last one. It was number 8. By the way, the most dangerous position, because the first one is surprising, the second one surprising. Number 8 may be after they are not surprising and already operating the air defense and launching missiles. The 7 of us were veterans of Yom Kippur War, so we have some combat experience. Ilan was the only one who joined the Air Force after Yom Kippur, but he was the one who planned all the mission and drew all the maps and did all the calculations, so that's why he joined, because we tried to keep the secret as minimum as possible. 10 years later, an American author came to me and say, Amos, I'm going to write a book on the attack, which will be a bestseller. It will be like Black Hawk Down. So, you know, I'm not an expert to writing books, but I don't think it's a Black Hawk Down. In a way, everything that was planned succeeded. Mm-hmm. There were not failures there. There was no love story. There was no, you know, unfortunately a killed pilot. Or it's a mission that was planned very well and executed beyond everyone's expectation. Yeah. But at the end of the day, being on both sides, the operators and the decision makers, I have been there in 2007. I think the real hero of this attack are not the pilots. It's the decision maker. Mm-hmm. He is the one that taking a historic decision, which was never done before, with a lot of risks. Iraqi retaliation. We were in the last stages of the peace with Egypt. Egypt can withdraw. Unlike Syria in 2007, the Americans were not informed, and they were, by the way, quite upset.
Yeah. Yeah, there are senior people in the government who later came back and said, you did a great thing. But at the time, I worked for a senator from Minnesota, Rudy Boschwitz, who was on the Foreign Relations Committee. The day after, of course, he was very pro-Israel. The chairman was very angry and talked to Rudy in very angry terms about what Israel had done. And the UN and elsewhere, they attacked it. But in the end, it was a great service to the world. Thank you so much, Amos, for this interview today and for your service to the State of Israel.
Thank you. Good evening.